What if the most powerful person in the world's greatest empire wasn't the warrior on the throne, but a woman hidden behind a silk curtain? For centuries, the Ottoman Harem was the world's most guarded secret, a place where a single unauthorized step by a man meant immediate execution. To the outside world, it was an exotic mystery, a fantasy of silk and spices. But behind those heavy golden doors of Topkapi Palace, it was something far more dangerous. It was a high-stakes political machine, a school for the elite, and a silent battlefield where slave girls rose to become the true architects of an empire that spanned 3 continents. To understand the harem, you must first forget the Hollywood myths. It wasn't a place of chaotic indulgence. It was a gilded cage, a highly structured society with a hierarchy more rigid than any modern army. The word harem comes from the Arabic word haram, meaning forbidden or sacred. It was the private sanctuary of the Sultan, managed with an iron fist by women who understood that in this palace, knowledge was the only currency and silence was the only way to stay alive. Imagine being a young girl, perhaps only 12 years old, taken from a village in the Caucasus or a town in Eastern Europe. You are brought to Istanbul, renamed, and initiated into a world you never knew existed. You are now an Assami, a novice. Your life is no longer your own, but your potential is limitless. You aren't here to be a servant, you are here to be trained. The harem was the most elite female academy of the age. These girls were taught theology, complex mathematics, world geography, and fine arts. They learned how to speak the sophisticated Ottoman Turkish of the court, how to play the oud, and how to navigate the deadly labyrinths of palace etiquette. For most, the Sultan was a ghost they would never see. They were being prepared to become the wives of the empire's most powerful pashas and viziers, creating a web of loyalty that stretched from the palace heart to the furthest provinces. But for the most beautiful and the most intelligent, a different path awaited. This path led to the Sultan's private quarters, and it was a journey governed by a hierarchy of steel. At the base were the Karais, the rank and file. Above them were the Sagirds, the apprentices. Then came the Gadikli, those who had personally waited upon the Sultan. But the real power began with the Gozda, the favorites. If a woman caught the Sultan's eye, she was given her own rooms, her own servants, and a seat at the table of power. But this was the most dangerous moment of her life. In the harem, favor was a target on your back. At the absolute summit of this pyramid sat the most powerful woman in the Islamic world, the Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother. She was the undisputed ruler of the harem. She controlled a massive private treasury, commanded a personal army of black eunuchs, and dictated the social life of the palace. But her real power was political. She was the only person who could speak to the Sultan with absolute honesty. She vetted his advisors, influenced his decrees, and often managed the state's diplomacy through private letters to foreign queens like Catherine de' Medici or Elizabeth I. In the Ottoman world, you didn't become Grand Vizier without the Valide Sultan's blessing. This led to a fascinating, yet terrifying period known as the Sultanate of Women. For nearly 130 years, the harem literally governed the globe. It began with Hürrem Sultan, the legendary Roxolana. She was a captive who did the impossible. She convinced Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent to break centuries of tradition and marry her legally. She moved the harem from the old palace directly into the heart of power at Topkapi. She wasn't just a wife, she was a sovereign. She built hospitals, mosques, and soup kitchens, and she managed an international intelligence network that would make a modern spy agency jealous. After her came women like Kösem Sultan, perhaps the most formidable woman to ever draw breath. She ruled as a formal regent for her son and later her grandson, holding the empire together during times of chaos and war for nearly 30 years. These women proved that while the Sultan wore the crown, the harem held the strings. But the silk walls of the harem were often stained with blood. The rivalry between the women was fueled by a brutal law, the Law of Fratricide. Every mother in the harem knew that if her son did not take the throne, he would likely be strangled with a silken cord by his own brothers to prevent a civil war. This turned motherhood into a desperate race for survival. A mother wasn't just raising a child, she was raising a future sultan, and she had to destroy any obstacle in his path. Poisoned coffee, hidden daggers, and secret drownings in the cold waters of the Bosphorus were common tools of the trade. To survive in the harem, you had to be a master of psychology, a genius of strategy, and occasionally, a cold-blooded assassin. Walking the halls between these powerful women were the only men allowed inside this forbidden city, the eunuchs. The chief black eunuch, or the Kisler Agassi, was one of the most powerful figures in the entire empire. He was the gatekeeper. He held the keys to every room and the secrets to every heart. He was the bridge between the silent world of the harem and the public world of the Sultan's court. Because he could not have a family of his only loyalty was to the Sultan and the Valide Sultan, making him the ultimate shadow power. As the empire grew older, the harem changed. The cage system was introduced, where princes were locked away in luxury within the harem walls, never seeing the outside world until they became sultan. This isolation often led to madness or extreme fragility, making the women of the harem even more influential as they became the sole guides for these sheltered rulers. Today, the empty, marble-tiled halls of the Topkapi harem stand silent. The echoes of whispers, the scent of expensive oud, and the rustle of silk robes are gone. But the walls still hold the weight of those untold stories. The harem was never the exotic fantasy the West imagined. It was a fortress of female intellect. It was a place where women, brought in as nothing, used their minds to command the most powerful men on earth. It was a world where love was a dangerous luxury, beauty was a weapon, and power was the only currency that guaranteed you would live to see the next sunrise. When you look at the grand mosques and the vast maps of the Ottoman Empire, remember that its history wasn't just written on battlefields by men in armor. It was written in the shadows, behind forbidden walls, by the women who ruled the heart of the palace. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the harem fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories hidden in history. See you next time.